saw Craig earlier, and I asked him, or I told him, I said, now Craig, if I catch you in any lies, I won't say a word. But I want you to return the favor.
If we get this age, you don't remember.
He said he would.
Right. Well, some of these young folks out here might catch you though. Yeah. So we won't have any individual mics or anything?
I don't have them this year, yeah.
Okay.
If you can
that's
just
fine.
talk really loud, that'd be
We're
great.
all pretty bashful.
Okay. Well, I think we've already started. I'm delighted again to be able to present some real fine fellows that all of you know. This is always a highlight to hear these guys visit and tell some of their stories. Alfred Janssen, as you know, Frank Higgs, Richard Clower, and Craig Cole. Now see, that's an old man, a brain fart there or something. This is gonna be real informal, and so we're gonna have each of them talk a little bit about their story, and what they've done, and so forth, and then we'll just discuss and cuss and visit with everybody. And we sure want you to ask some questions. If you know, they haven't discovered or discussed something you want to know about, why, just like we did last year. That gentleman back there, he visited with us last year, I think. Anyway, we'll start out. Alfie, would you like to, Alfred Janssen, a world-renowned photographer, and there's some pictures up here that if any of you are interested, he brought some of his pictures that he's taken through the years, and he'd be delighted if you wanted to come up and look at them as the day goes on. And if you have your spouse or family with you when you're talking, why, introduce them for us if you would. Alfie will take it off with you.
All right, thank you. Well, my beautiful wife Sally is back there. She said, you know, should I go with you? And she said, I'm not a legendary horseman. I said, but you put up so much horseman stuff, you deserve to be there. So I started photography in college, K-State, in the 1960s. Graduated with a degree in ag journalism, which included some photography work. Of course, I always had a passion for horses. And when I graduated, I went back to family farm and tried to increase my knowledge and practice of horse pictures. And the main way I did that was very, very simple. I went through the magazines and I found the pictures that I thought were good, and then I tried to tell myself or ask myself, now how would I take that same picture? What do I need to do to duplicate that quality work? And eventually it kind of panned out, and you know, living out there in the middle of nowhere, and farming, I wasn't able to travel, you know, like some of the people in the high metro areas, but all in all, we got around and met some really, really nice people and photographed some great horses, and it's been a great experience.
Frank, you can talk as long as you want to.
Truly, he was one of the, if not the best photographer for horses that I've encountered and seen his work. And so there's no baloney there.
That's very humbling.
Well, I was born a hillbilly kid in southwest Missouri, and the first animal I ever rode was a pig. My mom would set me on the hogs and I'd ride them, and they're hard to ride. And then my first job was, we had a stationary hay baler, and my first job was to ride one of the team of horses that powered the baler. They walked in a big circle, and I just wasn't supposed to let them stop. But I've always liked to ride mostly horses. I've ridden cows a lot. We milked cows and had brushy pastures in the hills down there, and I'd go find the cows. We had a bell on one, and Pearl was her name, and I'd ride her and bring the rest of the cows to the barn. And then I finally I spent 3 years in the Army, and when I got to where I could manage it, I bought a horse. And My first horse was a 20-year-old broodmare and her baby colt. That's Tinker Red McHugh. When I bought him, I thought he could be an AQHA champion. And I never had ridden a horse except to go get the cows. So I didn't know a right lead from a left lead, but I showed him and we got the championship together, which made me proud of him. And he sired 3 AQHA champions out of my mares, which were kind of cheap mares. But I always liked competing and trying to, there was always somebody better than me, and they helped me get better. And so it's just been horses, horses, horses for me as far as my hobby and vocation somewhat, and I always had to work a job, but managed to come up with some pretty good horses, just lucky enough, and never had any money to spend much to go buy one that was already for sure a really good one. But I could make the good guys hustle a little, and it was fun. I see only 2 of my family, my 2 daughters, Robin and Stephanie, sitting over here. They're keeping track of me.
Best one here.
Daughter-in-law, Roseanne. My granddaughter, Mackenzie. That's Bud's wife and his daughter. And the daughter is a cowgirl. You'll see her tonight in the ranch rodeo. But anyway, it's really a treat to get to see these guys again. I hadn't seen them in a long time, except for Craig. I see him more often. And I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
My wife Cheryl. Wave your hand, Cheryl. I'm Richard Clower, and I think in about 1963 I had the opportunity to drive a trotting horse there at Winfield for old man Johnny Lawrence. I thought he was terribly old, like 90 or 100. And I saw his obituary last week, and he was 71. But anyway, that guy got me hooked on the standardbred. So we raced trotters and pacers, my dad and I, through Kansas. And back then we had 6 places. We had Winfield, Stockton, Emporia, Eureka, Goodland, and Waukeeny. And that was a nice little circuit, and people came from Iowa and Illinois and everything. We had a good time. That gave me a chance to kind of be around horseshoers, and I thought those horseshoers were getting wealthy, you know. So I decided to go to horseshoeing school. That was in '67, and I was just going to shoe horses to get myself through college, and then I would just teach school the rest of my life. You know, have a job where I could race horses all summer, you know, because teachers don't work in the summer. Well, when it came time to do my teaching block, I just kept shoeing horses, and I shot for 53 years. And I got to shoe a lot of really good horses for really good trainers and really good owners. Met a lot of good people, but I happened to shoe 2 world champion running horses and 1 world champion 5-gated. And in the quarter horse industry, in 1999, a quarter horse association, everybody probably got one, I don't know, but it had a list of all the world champions. And I had shod 47 of them. And that was in '99. So if I said I shot 100, adding 20 years to it, I don't think I'd be lying too much. But it was really, and I don't know what I'd say, but the people I met, people might say, who's the best horseman you ever saw? I don't know. Because one guy was really good at breaking colts, but after 90 days, he'd probably take him somewhere else, you know. Somebody else was really good showing, but he's not very good at breaking colts. And so I really wouldn't say if I knew who the best horseman I was ever around, but I could drop a few names. You know?
I have to throw in a little bit. Richard is kind of one of my favorites because his sister and I are high school classmates, and born and raised there at Winfield. And I will admit I didn't know Richard too well when he was a young buck, but I certainly got to know him real well when he started shoeing horses, and he was the farrier of South Central Kansas and then all the other circuits around. And might say that I know one other world champion that you shot in 2007, so.
Was it rope horse?
Craig?
I'm Craig Cole. My wife Roseanne's back there. And anyway, I guess the only thing I've ever done is I started riding when I was 4 or 5 years old, and that's all I've ever done is trained horses. We run a training operation and we show horses all over. And my son's there with me, and we do everything with. We do everything from the cow horses to the pleasure horses to the reiners to the rope horses. We do them all. And the way stuff has progressed through the years, why whatever needed to be done, that's the way we done it. We changed different disciplines from year to year and whatever we do. And we haul a lot of amateurs and youth kids, and we just show a lot. And I farm too.
Thank you, guys. Alfie, I'm gonna kinda just jump back and forth here, but you brought your pictures and everything, and I heard you say something about how beautiful the Northwest country was. In all of your travels, where is there a particular area, that farm you went to, horses that you photographed that really was the outstanding that you remember, that you just can't think there's any place better than that?
Well, it's hard to narrow it down, it really is, because we went to some beautiful farms that were extremely well kept and manicured, and the horses were well conditioned, and we had good help. I guess if I had to sort one out, it would be Holiday Tree Farm, Holiday Ranch in Corvallis, Oregon. But that said, when I was up there, when they called me to come up there, it was usually in July or August. And that was not the raining season, it was the beautiful season. And that gentleman, that farm, they raised Christmas trees for a living. And you see literally mountainsides of Christmas trees. And another thing that kind of was a soft spot for them, they bought a horse that we raised and made him a champion, and then they used him in their breeding program. But as far as overall picturesque, they had a little creek that ran down through there, they had trees, they open areas, which made it somewhat difficult to find an open area for just pure background. That said, that was probably it. Pitts Ranch, I'll have to give them credit, for that area. Beautiful pastures, full of mares and their broodmare band and so on. That was great. As far as a commercial, more of a commercial deal, Matlock and Carol Rose, I mean, they had everything done up, as good as it could be done. The key to getting good photographs, number one, is good weather. And number two is to have the horses well prepared and to have a team that will display these horses so you don't have to do it. I've been places where I had to go set each foot. Well, that's not very efficient. And I've also been places where we've had good handlers, a good foot setter, and a good ear getter upper. And that's the key to good pictures, is that combination. Sometimes you can have those situations and everything else falls apart. I recall one thing that it was an occasion that I just won't forget. A guy called me from, I think it was South Dakota, I'm not sure. He wanted me to come up and take pictures of his horse. He had a 2-year-old TNT. He told me he was very proud of this horse. He said, what would it cost? And I said, well, I'd have to fly up there and blah, blah, blah. And I said, the best thing if you get some of your neighbors together and split the airfare and, no. He said, I don't think I want to do that. He said, how about if I brought him down to your house? Oh, that's fine. So that's what he did. And I told him where the barn was. I said, put him in there. I said, I'm going to be on the tractor. I'll come in the evening and we'll talk about it. I came in the barn from the farm, and I looked at that horse, and I thought, oh my goodness. You could stand on any side of that horse you wanted to, and you could see the front of it, at least 1 foot. And he had a head that was elongated, and ears that were elongated. What am I gonna do with this? Well, as luck would have it, the Lord was with us that day. We took him out to the place where we usually take pictures at the airport, where it's green grass and blue sky. And that horse, despite what he was, he planted his feet, stuck his head up in the air, cocked his head and his ears, stood there like a statue. And we got as good a pictures that you could get of not the best horseman. But that gentleman, I sent him the pictures and he was ecstatic. And he sent me a check right back, and he ordered postcards and business cards, and he loved that horse to death, no matter what he was. And that was a really good feeling to do that. And he wasn't a wealthy person. I've taken pictures for wealthy people, and they didn't show the appreciation that gentleman did for his horse.
I'll throw this out to all of you. How has the horse world, horse business, etc., changed, or what changes have you seen in your life in the horse world? Richard?
Well, I'd say the first thing when I started, 80% of the customers were men. They were trainers. They were in business. And now probably 80% of I'm retired now, but when I probably 80% were women, and in this area, very few. And secondly, when I started saddlebreds, walking horses, standardbreds, and now there's hardly any of those around. When I started going to doing the quarter horses and around here, that's all there was to do basically, to make a living was the quarter horses. But one thing that's changed in horses, I think, is when I used to go to Sonny Thompson's, and Danny Sullivan and I, we were young, and we'd dally those colts up, never had a halter on in their life, run through the stocks and put a halter on them and dally up, and they'd pull back and lunge forward, and we'd trim their feet. But almost all of them toed out behind, and they had a whole lot of flair on the outside of their hind feet. And 50 years later now, or 40 years later, that was 74 or something along in there. If anything, some of them are bow-legged and towing in, behind. They really changed the breed, and I think a lot of it was so they could stand prettier, Well, all 4 feet headed the same direction, but to handle themselves, they were just, if they tried to slide, they were going to slide like that. That's a big change I saw.
Frank, give us some of your experiences.
Well, one of the things that sticks out in my mind as far as changes, when I started showing horses was in '61, and I could take a horse, let's say a young horse, still in the junior division, 4 or under, if he was rideable, I'd go to the office and enter him in the Western Pleasure. And maybe if he was a little further along, I'd enter him in the Working Cow Horse, or the Western Riding, or the Reining. Might even 5 and showing a halter. I'd go in there and enter him in 5 events or so and pay their entry fee and go back and brush him up and saddle him up, or what, probably if it's halter, just leave him no saddle on and go show him the halter and then go on. Now you hardly ever see what I consider a true all-around horse. And like it or not, I've always been an all-around horse guy. And I've always been a hands-on guy. I never hired a trainer, ever. I started my own colts, showed my own horses. And so it's, of course, Greg's a trainer, but trainers are really heavily involved, in my mind, in horse shows. You'll see a pleasure horse going around the arena in the class, and there's usually a trainer standing there on the fence coaching them as they go by. And even in a halter class, you'll see guys signaling them, well, need to move this foot or that foot. And in some ways, I think that's a detriment to the exhibitors because, at least from my experience, I learned the hard way, and you develop more of a desire to learn and do on your own. My way, a poor guy could do anything anybody else could do. Now I'm not so sure. And that's disappointing.
So I'll just kind of expound on this a little bit of what Frank's talking about. So when AQHA started the versatility stuff here 3 or 4 years ago, whatever we're into it, that is why it has become so popular, is simply what Frank's talking about. Because 90% of your people that are gravitating towards the versatility stuff is that they can go show in a bunch of classes. So them horses that we're doing the versatility on are not as specialized as what, say, we were talking about the reiners or the pleasure horses or whatever. So I do all of it. But so anyway, you cannot take a horse that you can win with it in the pleasure and make a versatility horse out of it, because he is not physically able to do it, because we took in and made him this one-dimensional deal. And so it don't make any difference whether we're talking the pleasure or the reining horses or what we are talking about. We've made them so one-dimensional, that is all they can do. And so the way this stuff has been going, and the versatility is probably 6, 7, 10 times more popular with the run-of-the-mill people than your AQHA shows are. That our versatility shows will be twice as big as what an AQHA show. We also run shows with. So we've got a show coming up here in Hutchinson this next weekend. So on 2 days we'll have what we'll call the Showhorse Classes, which is just the pleasures and the horsemanships and all that stuff, and halter classes and stuff. And then the other 2 days we do the versatility stuff. And so like in the versatility, you've got to show in 2 riding events and 1 cattle class to be eligible for the all-around. And in the versatility, the only points that really amount to anything is winning the all-arounds. And that is not going to change. And that, because the ones that started the versatility deal, that was the whole theory behind it, that the all-around points was the only thing that counted. So like when you're doing the versatility deal, you've got to win an all-around to come up with any points. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a good deal as far as improving what we're going to have for horses that the general public can get along with. Because like doing the show horse stuff, 99% of your horses that we take and can be competitive with showing are not horses that ordinary people can keep at home. They have got to be with somebody. They are just hot enough that the ordinary people, you cannot take and ride them once every couple of weeks and that kind of stuff. They will not stay hooked. It's just what it is. And so when the versatility deals got started, so it's basically we've got a whole different set of horses that we use. In fact, I got 2 sets of horses. I've got a set of show horses that the people that we've got to do the show horse part of it, and then we've got another set of horses that we do the versatility with deal. And it's totally 2 different sets of horses. So if somebody's going to come and buy a horse and they want to do the versatility, this is the kind of horse I've got to have to go make him be competitive. If they want to do the show horse deal, I've got to have another horse to go do it with. They will not cross over. So that's just kind of talking about what Frank's talking about and what he's enjoyed through his life and the difference of how stuff has progressed through the years and stuff.
Greg, when you're talking about points, are you talking about AQHA points?
AQHA points, because versatility is a full-fledged AQHA deal. But as far as to say a specific event you're going to get points out of, you're not. it's the all around.
It's
So
racehorse versatility points that
yeah,
you get
it's
by,
the all around.
that you get by
Yeah.
to win or place in
And
the
so
yard.
like, say you gotta do, you gotta show in 3 events and 1 cow horse, then you can go show the halter. So we do the ranch riding, the ranch trail, like the amateurs do the boxing. It's called box drive box, so you box them on one end and then drive them to the other end, box them on the other end. And then they got the cow horse deal for the amateur with it, so, and then we do the cut, and then you do the halter. And, but you've got to show in one cow event to be eligible to do the halter, and then that's what gets you eligible to be an all in the all around. Until you do them 3 classes and the halter, you cannot even show in the halter until you've done that to be eligible for the all around.
I sometimes think the ranch horse versatility is an attempt to go back to the good old days to some degree.
Well, and that's exactly right.
And
So the group of people that do the ranch versatility deal is a totally different group of people than what we've got that we do the show horse with. And I shouldn't even really say this, but I'm going to anyway. So most of the people that gravitate towards the show horse end of the deal are a wealthier group of people than what the people that are going to the versatility, that come and do the versatility deal. You know, there's just that deal in between it. And I'm gonna just say it that way because that's what it is.
yeah, I know where you're coming from.
You know, it's what it is. But
Not
as
only-
far as to say that our versatility horses they're costing a ton of money right now. You cannot get a versatility horse bought that you can say I can go be competitive with. You know, when I'm talking about being competitive, having a chance to go win a class with this horse, he's gonna cost you a lot of money. It's just what the horse deal is right now. It's just crazy what it is. It ain't no different with the rope horses. You know, it's just crazy. And there ain't no rhyme or reasoning to it. How long it lasts, I don't know. But what it is right now, it's just crazy.
I've always thought of it somewhat this way. It's not only a matter of whether you can afford it or not, or whether you're willing to afford it or not. Now, I've always operated this way in my mind. I won't teach my kid that it's good sense to buy a saddle with a whole lot of silver on it and gadgets that make me look better in the show ring. That's not the right kind of education for young people, as I see it. So that's where I think the ranch horse versatility is one of the aspects of its popularity is they actually discourage some
Well,
of
you
those
can.
things that make it showier. And I appreciate that. Because I'm like my dad, I'm sort of a tightwad.
I think we can all remember, you know, Frank's talking about the 1960s and so on, the 70s. In western Kansas, we had a circuit of shows.
Yeah.
Every little town, you know, had their own show.
Yeah.
All volunteer help. We went out and begged and tried to steal people to donate trophies. And the day of the show, you know, you had volunteer announcer, you had volunteers in the concession stand, you know, everybody. And they pitched in, and we'd draw people from, you know, who knows wherever. They got to thinking that here's these podunk guys down here, we can go beat them. And they did. I mean, they'd come in and they'd come from you know, all over the country, especially when the, you know, the trailer races started, when they started showing horses all over the country. I would tell one little story. I think I told you the other day, but it sticks in my mind. There was a show at Oakley, Kansas, and we had a run of shows at Oakley, Scott City, Dighton, Leota, blah 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 blah, you know, all around. And but one day in specific, and I was in the arena taking pictures, so I can tell you this is a fact. But I don't know how many remember. I shouldn't mention names, so I'm going to. Stretch Bradley, and he was showing a mare called Gold Margarita. At that time, she was the high point halter mare in the country. And so he led her in that day, and age mare halter class, and she got second. And he went up to the judge and he said, I don't know who the judge was now, but he said, well, do you know who this horse is? And the judge said, no, I don't. And he said, well, this is Gold Marguerite. She's the leading halter horse in the country. He said, well, I guess this wasn't her day, was it? One of the things just briefly, you talk about the changes from then to now. The photography equipment has increased dramatically. You've all told your kids or your grandkids stories about, you had to walk uphill to school both ways, in the snow, against the wind. Well, we had to buy film, load the camera. We had advanced pictures one at a time. I don't know anything about the camera this gentleman has here, but it looks very sophisticated. And, we were reliant on good weather. The sun was our friend. No wind was our friend. And the pictures that we did there, we didn't have the versatility to do what the photographers do today. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I get the Quarter Horse Journal occasionally, and I look at those pictures, and I see a lot of headshots up close, and I'm thinking, how do you evaluate a horse by looking at his muzzle? Because some of them are just, in your face. Well, they do that for a reason. And one thing I learned, when you're out there trying to please a customer, you want to do what they want to do. And at Holiday Ranch was one example, and there were several others. But I would ask people, would you like to do something a little scenic or creative? No, we want to do it just like that. And so that you're kind of kept in a rigid position, and a lot of times those trends follow. And I'm sure if you went to a farm today, they'd say, we want a headshot just like these others. And just my analysis of what we tried to do was show the overall balance of the horse. Whether it was a side view, which is the easiest to, it's the hardest actually to hide an unfavorable feature. But we tried to show the whole horse instead of just one little. We got headshots and we got front shots and so on. But today what I see, and I'm not being critical because the trends change, like Craig said. They're focused on a more upscale, high profile. I don't know what the right word to use, but it's not a natural look the way I see it.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Right or wrong. It's changed dramatically, and I have thought about buying a really good high-speed camera and so on, and I thought, I have a hard time working my cell phone, so I don't think that would probably be the thing I need to do.
The wind photos at the world shows and some of those, they're still kind of that same three-quarter body shot or whatever. Those are, other than the digital equipment that you're mentioning, those shots have stayed kind of the same, but the advertising and the glamour shots certainly are different. I'm going to throw this at each one of you. Is there a particular horse that in your lifetime you felt has influenced you more than any other in your equine endeavors? And I'm sure that I already know your answer, Frank. But,
I bet you do too. Just to add to that, a few years ago I'm at a ranch rodeo that we did at the Coliseum, and some of you will know who Dean Williamson is, Forrest Williamson's son, capable hand. I see him over here in the distance, and he comes to me and he says, Mr. Tinker-Red McHugh. And that horse gave me the opportunity to learn, compete, and do well enough to survive. And he became a champion, and like I say, he sired champions. And so yeah, he got me off to a good start. And truly, when I bought him, I paid $400 for him and his mother. And I thought, that colt could be an AQHA champion. And he did. become one. And it was strictly him and I. And he wasn't a great horse, but he was a good one, and an athlete, and we did okay. Had a lot of fun. One time I used to, well, I had a family started, and I'm going to DeSoto, Kansas, to a horse show. So I had a little 2-man tent and a half-ton pickup and a bumper hitch trailer and Tinker Red McHugh. And we get to town a little before dark. I go to the grounds where the arena is or was, and I jackknifed my pickup and trailer and got a picnic table and made a corral for Tinker Red McHugh. And I laid on didn't need my tent, laid on the picnic table and slept. And I woke up early the next morning, he was raising Cain. A horsefly was after him, and he made a circle and kicked my driver's side door latch off. But anyway, we just did it together, him and I. And to me, it's hard to beat going that route.
A lot of memories.
Yep.
Richard?
Well, he's talking about the good old days, you know. First year out of high school, I went to Iowa to race 2 harness horses with 59 El Camino and a ragtop trailer. And got up there and slept in the barn, but that was normal. That's what we did, you know. And didn't have a driver's license, so I couldn't drive my own horse. And none of the old timers, they didn't know me. They wouldn't drive the horse for me, so I had to get a guy that just got his license. And we got all right. But the next town I went to, an old man came up to me and says, "I saw your horses, they're all right." He says, "I'll drive for you now." And he went out and won a couple races for me right there called Oka, Missouri. But it's, like you said, that's a good old time.
Yeah.
And I've had harness horses ever since, but once I got them broken, trained, and going, I'd take them to Illinois and have somebody race them for me, you know, and hopefully get them sold and make some money. And it just so happens, this is another one of my favorite stories, is
That's what we're here for.
well, I was training a horse at Winfield, and they wouldn't let me use the track because of the flood. So I take it out Ralph Fox's and I drive it around and stuff on the gravel roads, and that wasn't very successful. So I called a friend of mine in Illinois, and I says, "Would you race this mare for me?" And he said, "No, my son will. He's 16, he needs to drive some." I didn't want to, but I said, okay. But when that kid turned 18, he got to drive the Prairie Mutual tracks, and he won his first race with my horse, and he's now the leading trainer in the world. He's won as much as $19 million a year. His name's Tim Tetrick. His brother's in the top 10 also in drives and stuff. But anyway, I kind of live my life through him now. I watch the harness horse races about every night, right? But that, shoeing the harness horses and stuff, really helped me shoeing the quarter horses, because when I started shoeing quarter horses, basically it was 4 steel shoes. You know, just put them on, protect the foot, and that was all. And of course, I shot saddlebreds, so you had to make handmade shoes and punch the deep holes and everything, drive the high nails. But when I started shoeing the quarter horses, you know, some of those Mr. Impressive, or a lot of his colts didn't have any heel. You know, so I thought, well, I'm gonna, Mr. MBJ West is a world champion halter horse, but he's always got his heels down. So I put some wedge aluminums, and back then you couldn't buy them. I made handmade wedge aluminum shoes to raise his heel up. Boy, they looked good, and Bruce was proud of me, you know, and he goes, Bruce Walters, he goes to the show and comes back, and the first thing he did is get those shoes off that horse. They think he's crippled because he got aluminums on. Well, now, if you know anything about it, they've all got aluminums on. I mean, you can't win without them. So time change, yeah.
You haven't mentioned, because they weren't yours particularly, but you shot a lot of good quarter horse racehorses too. Let's talk
Charlie Hunt was about the only.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, about the only racehorse guy, but it really worked out great because he's gone all summer to the races, and everything else kind of slowed down in the summer there. So I had time for my other customers, and then in the winter when everything else kind of slowed down, he's home breaking back then, 45 head of yearlings or something like that. He's down to a dozen now. But, and I followed him to Texas and to Iowa and Oklahoma. I went to Oklahoma twice a week a lot of times to shoot his racehorses. And he had 2 world champion running quarter horses. Juno's Request was the world champion age mare, and Rare Bar was the world's champion age stallion. And a great experience. Yeah.
I'd like to ask Richard a question about sliding plates. Do you think that's doing a horse a good favor?
Well, I guess if you want to go out and compete and win, I think you better do what you can, you know. But I think if it's a controlled slide, there's nothing wrong with it whatsoever. If it's a uncontrolled slip, you know, then you got issues. So I think as long as you got your sliding plate, you're in the arena where it's supposed to be, and they're going to be just fine. Yeah. And you shoe it like a normal foot. So many guys want to have a long toe and no heel.
Yeah.
Well, that's not right. You still got to keep that coffin bone and that foot aligned to where everything is natural with the horse. So. Something else I would say was different is, talking about Charlie, he had a customer that was a professional boxer, and he had a horse, and he wanted me to put glue on shoes on it. And I said, Charlie, I can just tack some shoes on it. It had been found that it had 1 high heel and 1 bar shoe, and it was a mess. So I just tacked some shoes on it. And Charlie called me and says, that man wants glue on shoes, sassafras or something like that. So I get on the internet and I Google it, and sure enough, so I ordered him some and put them on him. And of course, I was kind of leery. They cost like $90 for a pair of them, you know. Anyway, I put them on him, and he ran 105 speed index at 550 yards and made $870,000. And I called the company and said, you know, I made fun of your product for years, and they are a great product. I didn't use them much, but I kept 1 pair of each size in my truck just in case. You know, and a number of times Dr. Jen Spear called me and said, hey, you know, come glue these shoes on this horse, you know. So that's been a big change. And one more change and I'll shut up.
No.
Well, back in the day, if I had Dr. Riding and I were looking at a horse, he'd have to drive back to his clinic, develop it, you know, go back out and look at the horse again, maybe take some more pictures, you know, and then call me and say, and Dr. Riding always said the same thing. He said, roll the toe, square the toe, give your wedge pad, cut it off the widest part of the frog, and then wedge you back up to his proper angle. And I think a lot of people forget that part of it. You know, they'll roll the toe, square the toe, cut the heel off the widest part of the frog, but they don't wedge you back up to where he's comfortable, you know. But anyway, now, Dr. Jim, he goes out and takes a picture of it, x-ray, emails it to me. You know, Jessica Harrison does too, the same thing. Email it to me, and I just look at that x-ray and talk to him on the phone, and, you know, it saves so much time, because they can, you know, take it and then look at it right then. Technology.
Yeah.
I'll shut up for a minute.
Oh, great. Got any favorites that you can say really helped you in your horse career?
Well, I don't know exactly where to start. The first horse that I got that was a good one was the old Rooster's Dawn horse. And we bought him when I was a senior in high school, or maybe it was the year I got out. And then he was the High Point Halter Stallion of the Nation that year. And then I went into the service for a couple of years, and then when I got out, Watchdoe Jack was a baby, and I was working for Warden Dudley at that time. I showed him as a weanling and a yearling out and won a bunch with him, and that's when Howard bought him when he was coming to. I broke him when he was coming to. Then we had the big investment. I don't know, I've had a bunch of them good horses through the years that, and so every one of them probably taught me a bunch as we went through the years. Back here a year ago, I bought it, I have no idea why, but I bought another stud that's a one-time Pepto horse that he could maybe be the most talented horse that I ever rode. He just, and he's a horse that fell through the cracks. He'd been in the cow horse deal when he was a young horse, and he'd been through the 3-year-old deal, and he never won a lot. He'd won some, but he never got to be a big time horse. Then he just kind of laid around for 7-8 years. And we was at the World Show. Alex Ross had got a hold of him. And we was down there riding around one afternoon. And he said, you got anybody that might be interested in this one-time Pepto horse? And I thought a minute. And I said, oh, I don't know. And I said, yeah, maybe I do. I said, why don't you go get him and I'll go ride him. Anyway, to make long story short, why, I went ahead and bought the horse. And we just started having colts out of him here. Well, the first one was born here the other day. But he could be the most talented horse I've ever rode. And I've rode a lot of good ones. But for what we want to do with him, why, he's a good horse.
Alfie, you got one that tugs at your heart?
Well, I've always got a soft spot for Two-Eye Jack. Our son rode a horse that we raised by Two-Eye Jack, and Craig started him, and our son rode him the time he was 3, Craig, 2,
Yeah,
3.
yeah.
And that horse was, you kind of had to learn about him. But he treated our son so good. I mean, he was solid. And we had, I guess, the first AQHA champion that we had, Craig showed for us out of that same mare. Is that right?
Yeah.
Same mare?
Yeah.
Okay. And she was a real pretty thing. And we raised several horses, several colts by Pitzer's horse. One of the most elegant horses that I can recall was a Pitzer rancher's Baron Bell. And I don't know what about him. He was just, the word regal, elegant sticks out in my mind. I mean, he had so much presence. We had one really nice foal out of him. He died. So we didn't get to go on with him. But then we bred some mares to the horses down at Matlock and Carroll Rose that we raised. Mare that turned out to be a reserve world champion mare as a 3-year-old halter horse. Then she came back the following year and she qualified for the Super Horse event and placed in 4 out of the 5 events, and she was, placed in the halter class in her working clothes. She wasn't really in halter condition. So that has to be a favorite too. And then we had one mare that she was by a horse called Sugar Muscles, who's Sugar Bar bred and King kind of a cross, and she raised more good colts than any other mare that we had. The problem was the good ones were really good, the other ones died. And no particular reason, it's just one of those things. But the Zanpar horse, for as far as our show horses, for the horses that we kind of lived with, the Two-Eye Jack style horses they were just always a favorite.
What advice would you guys give to somebody, or how did you make the horse industry profitable for you? If somebody came up to you and said, how can I make a living or make some money in the horse industry, what would you say to a person like that? Or is it possible for an interloper to come in and, unless you've grown up with it and been raised around it, what do you say to somebody as far as the business aspect of the horse world? Anybody want to start that one?
I'll start it.
Okay.
Did a good job.
Is it
I guess
possible?
the biggest thing that you got to want to do is you better be able to work. And that's 365 days out of the year, 10, 12 hours a day. And if you ain't willing to do that, then don't even think about it. If you think you want weekends free, you want this or you want that, don't even think about it. That's the biggest thing. If you wanna work and work at it, then anybody can go and do it. Cause you can learn to do it, but you gotta be willing to work. You know, it don't happen overnight. Yeah, you'll spend 20 years trying to get there. And I don't care how good you think you are, whatever, it's gonna take a long time. And Richard can tell you this too, that you don't learn to shoe one of them things like he does today that he did when he started.
Sure.
You know, it just, the only way it gets any better is you do it over and over and over and over.
I think it takes maybe half a lifetime and dedication throughout that half of a lifetime. And you possibly need to know, you need to have sort of a born in yourself eye for a horse. And not everyone has that. I've had some really good friends that afforded themselves some nice horses. They bought them. But they never reached any level of profitability or really success in the horse world because it just wasn't there. It's like, I don't care if you're a mechanic or a horseshoer, not all of you are among the best. In order to be successful, somebody's got to think you are among the best. Because I can sell winners horses easily, but if a horse doesn't have some kind of reputation through its bloodline or its own performances, not everybody can sell them. And I've been in the horse business, like I said, 61 years. I still get calls and sell horses more now than recent years. This past year was my best year ever. And I sold horses to people far and wide, really. No big deals. I haven't sold horses for money that people would brag about, but pretty good money for me. But reputation is, I don't care what kind of business you're in, reputation is critical, I believe. And it doesn't come for free. You gotta be working at it, and you gotta be honest, and a little bit of luck.
Takes a long time to get there too.
It does.
From a horse's point of view, you gotta answer the phone, show up on time, do what the trainer wants, or the vet. It's a team deal. It's not just, you know, I'm gonna do it this way, you know. I shot a few horses for Frank, and he's a ranch type cowboy guy. You know, he probably wanted a little different type. But when I was going to MBJ and showing strictly show horses, they wanted a pretty foot, you know. Then he wanted a foot that's 57 degrees plus a wedge pad, you know. I mean, but that's what I did. I didn't argue with him. And I wasn't a very good horse herder to start with, but I kept educating myself and going to clinics. And of course, they didn't have things available 50 years ago like they do now. No videos or anything, but you gotta work as a team and try harder and be willing to try something different. But the main thing, I was on a horseshoer that shows up on time. I never do that.
Or just
The
shows
same
up.
day, yeah.
I think everybody here who's experienced that.
Or just shows up. I think from a photographer standpoint, I've been out of that for so long that I don't know what it would take. It would be hard for me to be optimistic that you could make your sole living with horse photographs. You know, I was fortunate because I had a farm, and I didn't have to make a living with photography. The photography by itself was profitable, but that wouldn't have afforded many luxuries. You know, I go along with Craig, you know, and Rich too. The more you do, the more confident you become as far as the style or the look. I think you have to have a mental image in your eye when you look at that horse and you say, okay, now what am I gonna do to show this horse at his best? And sometimes it just takes a little bit of tweaking. You know, a lot of times you'll set one up and he wants to turn his hocks inside, so you go around there and you pull them apart and they squeeze them back again. So, you know, you have to have somebody do that. I've had sometimes when they wouldn't want to put a foot down, so you've got to put a pocket knife. You learn little tricks as you go along. And I agree also with, you got to please your customer. You know, that they have an idea, you know, what I want you to make my horse look like, that world champion. Well, I'm sorry, sir, but that's not what I'm going to do that. But you can't be that blunt when you say, well, sir, we'll do our best. And that's all you can do. But it does take time and time and time again. And another thing is not only showing up on time, because you usually make a schedule for you know, your session, but you need to get those pictures delivered to the customer. And one law that I never did break is you never want to show the customer the bad ones. Because I don't care how many you take, you're going to get some that you're not too proud of. So you just don't send them. They go in the trash. And so you try to present your work at its best, you know, every time. And to the integrity, I've had guys, you know, complain. I said, well, forget it. Don't worry about it. Really interesting. I don't know how many years I was doing that all together. But from the first horse I photographed to the very last horse I photographed, I had bills that I had a hard time collecting from some people. But when I quit, I had one outstanding bill. It was for $15.78. And some of them were slow, but I always got paid. And I was terribly naive. I would go somewhere and take the photographs, stand at the plane first, because I'd have to charter a plane out of Scott City, and send them a book full of 8x10s and not charge a deposit. That wasn't very bright. But as luck would have it, everybody eventually paid me. You know, some of them were happier than others, but you know, that'll work out. That's just the way it goes. Persistence.
Do you have a favorite horse show or a favorite facility that you've shown horses in throughout the years that you like to go to? This is a little different than where you took your pictures, but is there a favorite arena or a favorite fairgrounds or a favorite show that you've gone to that stands out to you?
Well, from my standpoint, virtually all of our work was done outside the arena. When you're in an arena trying to do, you know, rail work, or you got background stuff, and it's not ideal. It's any arena setting is more challenging than if you can try to control the situation out where you have, you know, the best scenario is green grass and blue sky, which is rare. So you do the best you can. You just have to, you know. As far as a favorite arena, I wouldn't be able to answer that.
And you might include in this how the show facilities have changed. Look at, we're not privileged to that here in Kansas, but look at Oklahoma City, both Tulsa and Oklahoma City, the Sun Circuit in Arizona. You know, there's places like that, the Dixie National, all of them around. The facilities have changed. There's facilities out there to show in that we wouldn't have ever dreamed of a few years ago.
But then they kind of ruined the 9-day Western Kansas run that that people used to live for.
Yeah. Well, like Craig was saying, and Frank too, you know, the shows that we had out there, you had farmers and farmers' kids and farmers' wives come in from all over. They'd enter that horse in 5 events, barrels, poles, you know, whatever. And it was a lot of times a family affair that we don't see today, I don't think.
They had good numbers too.
Yeah,
I mean,
we had.
They weren't small shows necessarily.
Scott City had a number of Class A shows back in those days.
You could go to a show, have 28 classes, and it'd be a large Class A show, and you'd be through by 4 or 5 in the afternoon because every class had quite a few. Now we go to a show, and maybe there's 100 classes in there, and we still don't get that number of entries. Craig, any place that, any facility that stands out to you that?
I don't know, you know, I guess probably the, you know, say whatever new place, whether it's Oklahoma City, wherever, Scottsdale or whatever you're talking about, the first time you go, you think, oh my God, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen. But after you've been there several times, then we're going and showing, this is where we're going this weekend. This is where we're going. You know, it just, whether it's Tulsa or whatever, anyway, as far as I'm concerned, you know, after you've been there once, why then you go again, why then it gets to be, we're just going to another show. It don't make any difference whether we're in Hutchinson showing horses, or whether we're in Oklahoma City or Tulsa or Florida or where it is. It's just, you know, because, well, the way the shows go anymore, you start early in the morning, it's late at night, and it's work all day long. And as far as to say, I don't even know why in the hell we do it, but as far as to say it's enjoyable or anything like that, it ain't that.
Couldn't keep away though, couldn't it?
No.
No.
And I ain't gonna quit until they bury me, but as far as to say it's enjoyable, I don't know is that.
Well, just for an example, the last horse show that I entered a horse was at the Kansas Coliseum. Talked to my grandson Troy. I had a horse that I thought was a pretty good heeling horse. It was at one of those region shows. So we go and enter, and had 3 judges. And Bud, my son, headed to steer, and Troy heeled it and won it under all 3 judges. There wasn't that many in the class. Spent a couple $100. Later on, they mailed a buckle to my grandson. And so many of those really large shows that last a long time, they have a lot of classes, but a very few in each class. And I can remember clearly when, say, Junior Western Pleasure, out here in the country somewhere, there would be maybe 50 or more horses entered. They'd split the class and show this group and then the next group and then find the winner eventually. You don't see that anymore. So I think we've gone way backwards. That's how I feel about it. But I always preferred to show in an outdoor arena, especially in a performance class. Seems as though there's less distraction to the horse. I don't know if that's really true or not, but it's kind of how it seemed to me. So I really enjoy, no matter the performance class, whether it's cows or what, outdoor arenas. And Kansas, I suppose, still has. But I thought all of the outdoor arenas that we went to in western Kansas, or you name it, were plenty okay.
Richard, any favorite racetrack?
Well, DuQuoin, Illinois has got to be the nicest, prettiest one I was ever to, but they were all fun.
Yeah.
But life changes, you know. But I haven't had one for 10 years. I just do other things now.
We haven't opened it up to the to you folks. Anybody have any questions? Anything you'd like to talk about that we haven't hit on?
Which one?
Yes, sir, Dr. Janssen.
What about mentors along your horse career? Were there people that really helped you along, or that sage advice that stuck with you?
I never had a mentor, but most of the guys that I learned from don't know it. But I watched them. And anybody that beats me, I want to know how he did it. And I would say Dean Smith was one for sure, Billy Allen for sure, and there were others that came from out of state occasionally and in and out, but the 2 most common people that I watched and tried to learn from were Dean Smith and Billy Allen.
Well, that's the way with me. I didn't have a mentor as far as a horse shoer, but my dad was a really good horseman. And then when I started shoeing, Mark Chestnut, he always said, well, Matlock said this or did this or something, let's try that. And then, Jeff Malott, he was on the road all the time, and he'd get a horse shot in California, and he said, Richard, I saw a guy do this, why don't we try that? And a lot of times they worked. But I was really like to get that new information and learn that. And those guys I worked for good enough guys that were getting exposed to it. So many horsers, if they never shoe for a really good trainer, they don't get exposed to those things, those different ideas about shoeing or styles of shoe. When I first started shoeing, there was a keg shoe and there was a basic aluminum shoe. And now there's racks of styles and weights and sizes. Makes it easier. You can spend a lot more money on inventory too. So. Kind of got sidetracked there.
You don't have to make them though.
Well, no. Enjoyed making them, but it wasn't very profitable, I didn't think, unless you needed to, Of course, you had to use old coal forge back then, and you couldn't have it in the barn ready to smoke the barn up, so you had to have it outside, and it stood in the rain and the snow and stuff. So, probably 30 years ago, I switched to gas forge, and that helped a lot.
Alfred, anybody teach you how to take a picture?
My biggest educational device was the Quarter Horse Journal. And of course, back in those days, like the Stallion edition was 600 pages thick or more. I was going to bring one and I forgot it. But there was nobody in our neighborhood that was really did what I did. I had a mentor in Garden City, Kansas, who was a commercial photographer, and he taught me, about some of the business aspects. But as far as the rest of it, it's just look and learn. You see a picture in a magazine or a catalog, whatever, and if you like it, you say, well, were they standing up when they took that picture? Were they sitting down? Were they in the front of looking at the horse's shoulder? Were they looking at kind of a back quarter view? And then you have to adjust your equipment. I did go visit with Daryl Dickinson one time, and he said, if you want to take pictures like mine, you've got to have equipment exactly like mine. Well, he had a big, gigantic speed graphics camera that weighed 2 tons, and I didn't want to do that. So I did the next best thing, and I bought a camera that shot 2 1/4 square inch negative because they were easier to work with in the darkroom because I did all my developing stuff myself. But it's a learning process, and sometimes a horse will stand there and let you do what you need to do. The first thing you have to do is try to get the sunshine coming over your left shoulder. And sometimes you don't have that opportunity. But the main thing is try to see that picture that you find attractive for whatever reason. And you'll find that different photographers, after a while, they don't have to put their name on it, you can recognize the style. And you have to try to imprint that into your brain, and then when you try to sit the horse up, whatever angle or whatever you do, you'll know instantly when he hits that particular pose that you're looking for. And then the next rule is you keep shooting until he moves. You don't stop. I had a camera that had an electric drive. I don't know how many pictures yours will take per second. Mine would take 1 picture every 1.5 seconds. And you can have an ear flick, fly light, all kinds of things can go wrong in that 1.5 seconds. But you keep pushing that button until the horse moves. Because when you get a series of 6, let's just pick a number and say 6 photographs of exactly the same pose, one of them's going to have an ear flicked a little bit, one of them's going to have a tail on the wrong side, and so volume is good. One thing, to comment a little bit about the making a living with photographs, you have to develop a style that people find attractive, and you have to be consistent with that style, and that just takes a long time to develop, and you got to be patient.
Greg, any comments?
Well, I guess the only thing I'd say, my deal's a little different, that where I just growed up in this, and I've showed every year, we go probably 50, 60 shows a year. There's years it's more than that. So everybody you've ever heard of or anything else or seen through the years, the last 50 years, I've been around and knew, and I take bits and pieces of what they've done and what this and that and the other thing is. So as far as to say just one person, I've never been that way. It's more that what I thought I wanted to get to what I wanted, not what the quote, the thing that was supposed to be. It was more what I wanted my horses to be. So, you know, that I took bits and pieces from everybody in the world.
I'll share one little story here that goes along with what's Albie's talking about, the little flicks. Frank Buckman did a nice story on one of my horses here a while back that my boy owned and showed. And I had one really good picture of him mounted, and he wanted a picture of him. And so I sent it to him, and he called me back and he said, Stan, he says, "Is that horse sound?" And I said, "Yes." Well, he had just begun to move his leg, and one of his legs was out of focus almost, and it made him, somebody that looked at it like he did, "Is that horse sound?" Well, yeah, but he went to move his leg just as the photographer clicked and we didn't have the one to take every 1.5 seconds. It was somebody with a little old click camera, you know, and everything. Anything else that anybody would like to visit with these gentlemen about?
Which one of you guys have had the horse that's had recent success? Any of you guys?
I think that's a loaded question.
I will tell you one thing. One of these guys is older than I am, and I didn't think anybody here was going to be older than I am, and he's a few weeks older than I am. So Craig's the one that's still showing the most.
Yeah.
Anyway, back in November at the World Championship Ranch Rodeo in Amarillo, a horse that I owned along with my grandson. I owned him and gave half interest in him to Troy. He was the top horse at the World Championship Ranch Rodeo. So I consider that to be, in my life, a fairly huge success in that category. And I'm not about, at least don't think I'm about to be stopped. I bought what I think a really nice weanling stud colt in October, and he's looking really good, and he's going to be part of my future.
There you go.
So I'm looking for more success.
More success.
What about you, Craig?
Oh, I don't know, we've had a lot of horses win a lot this summer and stuff. I've got a youth girl that was third at the youth world in the trail and stuff, and we had several horses in the top 10 at the world show this year, and you know, it's just what it is, I guess.
You might brag on Ryan a little bit.
Yeah. So Ryan does the cow horse stuff, and he ropes with, and we do the sale horse deal quite a little with, and we do Pitzer's deal with the deal up there. And he's won a bunch in that stuff, but so we do. I guess I don't like to brag on myself too much.
Somebody's got to.
That's right. That's what this is
I'll let
for.
everybody else do that.
Anything else that anybody would like to? Yes.
I have a question.
Good.
And I apologize before I ask it. Since none of you have stopped, what age are you? I told you.
I'm 75, that's.
I'm the youngest one, I'm 72.
85.
Thank you.
77.
We can ask questions too, you know.
Help yourself out. I'm married to a 73-year-old.
Two.
Oh, no, sorry, excuse me.
Well, you don't have to apologize. I'm proud to say I'm 85.
That's great.
Good. I hope I'm still going strong as you gentlemen are at that age.
I hope you are too.
If somebody doesn't kill me first.
That's a possibility.
Well, we've run a little over our hour, but I've certainly enjoyed what you guys had to say, and they'll be around. And this, some of Alfie's pictures are up here in these albums if you'd like to take a look at them. Alfie, I would ask you one question, and you may not be able to answer, but was there any one horse or one account, you mentioned Two-Eyed Jack, was there any one horse or one account that moved you up to stardom in the equine photography world?
I'm still reaching for stardom.
Well, there you go. I think you've already been there for a long time.
I agree.
Well, of course, the horses that give you the boost are the ones that the clients are heavy advertisers.
Yeah, yeah.
And in that standpoint, pictures quite honestly were not heavy advertisers.
Right.
Probably, I guess if you had to pick one Starlight deal, the work they did for Matlock and Carol Rose, they used the pictures in advertising more so than a lot of my other customers. Now that said, I went through an old Court Horse Journal December issue some time ago, and I looked through there and I found pictures that had my stamp on them. Like, now, who was that? So it's accumulation, I think, of, I wouldn't want to hook my wagon to one star. Obviously, the ones that put your work in front of the public so other people can see it. One huge compliment I had one time was a guy from, he was north of New York into Canada. And he called, introduced himself, and they had a horse up there that they wanted. He said, "We've looked at all the pictures in the journal, we like yours the best." Well, you know, that was very self-satisfying for me, and I flew up there and took pictures, and everything was great. I had one guy say, "Well, you make my horse look like a big fat Hereford bull."
Don't leave me a Hereford bull.
And, you know, he paid me, but he told the trainer, he said, "Don't have him back." But it's accumulation of a lifetime of experience and growing and more experience and you know, dealing with customers is challenging. You know, anybody works for the public knows that. But quite frankly, we had far more better good customers than I'd say, you know, difficult customers.
Sure. Anything else from anybody? Well, thanks a lot for joining
Thank you, and
Old postcards up here if anybody wants to sift